Well, welcome to step two to building a generous church. And today we're going to be talking about trusted leadership and why trusted leadership is so critical when it comes to moving our church as a whole towards more generous living. Way to begin to think about this is that trust really is the currency of leadership. And so if leaders aren't trusted, people won't follow. And your leaders are the ones that you want to kind of permeate when it to the culture, building the foundation of where you want to go. And so if we want to grow and become a generous church and live as generous people, then the leaders need to exemplify that, which means the leadership needs to communicate and model what generous living actually looks like. They lead the way when it comes to their sacrifice. And again, this is in the holistic approach, the fourfold way of thinking about generosity, that they're leading in the way when it comes to how they think about and sacrifice their time for the kingdom activity, for the work of the church, the way that they use their talents, the way that they actually use their touch and connect with people relationally. And then lastly, financially. Now, here's the thing. That means you need to understand where your own leadership team is when it comes to the disciplines and the discipleship process of their overall generosity. In other words, what are the requirements for your leadership team to actually become leaders when it comes to generosity? Is there a requirement for them to actively be serving in some sort of area of ministry using their gifts? If not, I'm going to highly encourage you to add that to the protocols and requirements for people to actually be able to move into a leadership position. Second of all, it means you too you need to know where your people are actually giving when it comes to percentage giving. We don't invite any high level leaders, for instance, elder level leaders, into that level of leadership if they're not a regular tither in the life of the church, which means I need to know where they're at when it comes to their regular giving. And I know that there's kind of different perspectives on this. That some people go, well, I don't want to know where anybody is because I'm afraid that I may show favorites. The reality is, this is a discipleship area of their spiritual journey. And as being the primary pastor and leader overseeing the church as a whole and where people are in their discipleship process, I need to know where they're at in this area as well. If I show favoritism towards somebody and not towards another person, just simply because they're giving, that's an issue that God needs to deal with in my heart and in my life. But I can't walk with them and help them grow in this area of their life if I'm not even aware of where they actually are. Now, that's a challenging thing. I get that. But at the same time, do you really want people leading at a high level in the life of your church and speaking into the life of other people that are giving $0 and zero of their time to the organization as a whole? Probably not. And so the only way to actually know that is you need to have access and know where they're at. So in order, number two, in order for the church to buy in and begin to live culturally, they have to watch and witness the overall leadership of the church living this out as well. Third thing is, when it comes to building trusted leadership and moving people in this area, this journey of generosity, I want to encourage you to be open and transparent about the current financial standing of the church. This can play out in multiple different ways. Maybe it's you just talk about it. Maybe you do a social media update. For me, one of the things I found it works at a very practical rhythm in the life of the church. Every quarter, I just stand up before the sermon and give a quick update. It's maybe 3 or 4 minutes, not long and drawn out, but I love to just give people a quick update of kind of, hey, here's where we're at. We talked about some goals earlier in the year that we wanted to see accomplished, and we knew that this was connected to our over financial health. I want to kind of give you a quick report that this is where we're at towards reaching those goals, or this is where we're at from a financial standpoint. And then that allows me to give an invite to people that may be new to the church, that maybe they had no idea that this is part of our goals and this is part of our makeup. And now I just educate them that, and then invite them. Hey, if you're not actually been one of our participants in joining, linking arms with us and joining the process of helping us get to that goal financially, I'm going to invite you to join us and give them different platforms of how they could begin to give. But this is what it means to be open about your finances from a transparency standpoint. Then on top of that, we do 2 membership meetings a year. And at those membership meetings, I just disclose, hey, this is where we're at. Here's the big budget items. Here's what we brought in. Here's what our expenses are. And then I open it up for Q&A for people to ask more pointed questions. Now, there are certain things that I'm not going to disclose when they may come and go, well, what does your youth pastor actually make? What are we actually giving them? I'm not going to disclose those actual amounts because I want to keep that staff person safe in that process. And then lastly, one time a year, I do a state of the church address. And usually that falls a couple weeks into January, where I just go over the past year and I talk about all the goals, all the things that we seem to see God do in the life of the church. I share major celebration points. I talk about where we were at financially at the beginning of the year. I talk about where we are at the end of the year. And the ways that I also talk about that is I talk about overall giving units in the life of the church. That my desire, my hope is that we actually see the number of participants actually increase over the year. And I explain it's not necessarily about the dollar amount that people are giving, but I'm curious to know, and my hope in my heart is that more people are actually joining us in the mission of the church and moving forward. And so I care more about those giving units going up than actually seeing dollar amounts actually increase. And so those create moments to be able to constantly trickle, constantly share, and leverage being an opportunity to be transparent about the current financial standing. Next, one of the things that's helpful to know when it comes to goal setting and how you talk about vision and how you connect it to the finances, leaders do like it big. But one of the things you need to understand is your people need it small. The people in the seats out there need it in bite-size form. And there's a couple ways to begin to think about this. Let's say you have a need. You need to increase your overall giving per month, maybe by $2,000. Break it down into a bite size. Say, this is what we need. We need 5 people to give $25 extra a month. We need another 5 that would be willing to increase their giving to $50 a month. And so break it down into bite-sized moments where somebody can go, well, I can do $25 a month. Other people might go, well, I can do $100 a month. And so frame it in such a way that they can begin to understand, hey, I don't have to bite off the whole thing, but I could bite off some of it in equal participation by a larger group of people in the church. We can make up that $2,000 shortfall fairly quickly. The other thing is, as you talk about maybe major goals and major opportunities, you need to frame it again in ways that people can understand it. And it might be, hey, we're going to do a special giving weekend. And so we're going to ask everybody in the life of the church to give $100 on this weekend. And we're going to set aside that money to go towards this project. And make a big deal about it, celebrate it, and then challenge people. If you can't do $100, I'm going to encourage you to jump into like our financial peace class. So that way, next time that we do this, you could actually participate in that. Would you just use that money to get right side up in your finances? If $100 isn't much of a stretch for you, would you give $200? If $200 isn't that big of a deal, give $500. If $500 isn't a big deal, consider giving $1,000. If giving $1,000 isn't a big deal, give $10,000. And then I always kind of make a fun joke. If $10,000 isn't a big deal, hey, come talk to me afterwards. I want to have a great conversation with you, and everybody will kind of laugh. But this is what I mean is create it in bite-sized moments in where people can understand their part and their role. They don't have to be a mega millionaire in order to be able to participate. Everybody can play a role in helping move the mission forward. And then lastly, you got to make sure that you leave room to celebrate. Celebrate all the big things that God is doing. Connect people's generosity, that they give of their time, that they give of their finances, and that these things wouldn't be able to be possible if it wasn't for them being living and choosing to live generously. And so take moments, bring people up, celebrate what God is doing, and connect the dots that their generosity is what helps unlock this missional opportunity.